A little after 2 o'clock on a slow Friday afternoon, Una Younger's cell phone rang. It was a brief call that will haunt her for the rest of her life. "It's happening again," Lacey Spears yelled down the phone. "Garnett's having more seizures. I have to get him to the hospital." Lacey's adorable 5-year-old son had been home from school for a week with a high fever. Several times already he had been rushed to the emergency room for seizures. So Una knew it could be a matter of life and death. She was frantic, remembered Una. She kept screaming, "Get Judy's car! Get Judy's car!" Since the 26-year-old single mother and Garnett had first arrived at the fellowship community, Una had taken them under her wing. Now, 15 months later, in January 2014, she considered them family. "She was the daughter that I never had," said Una, 49, "and Garnett was like an extra son." Married with a grown-up son, Una had lived almost 10 years in the secluded fellowship community in Rockland County, New York. Founded half a century ago, the non-profit farming cooperative 70 Adults and Children follow the spiritual science teachings of Austrian philosopher Rudolf Steiner. There is an elder care home, craft studios, and a large working farm with cows, sheep, and chickens. 46-year-old former businessman Matt Uppenbrink, who now runs the fellowship, first met Lacey and Garnett through a mutual friend in Clearwater, Florida. With his encouragement, the widowed young mother had applied to join the fellowship so that Garnett could attend its prestigious Green Meadow Waldorf school. After several interviews and a reference check, they had been welcomed into the community. Lacey and Garnett had arrived in early November 2012, soon after Hurricane Sandy had ravaged the small cluster of fellowship buildings. They moved into the Uppenbrink's house until an apartment was available. From the beginning, Lacey Spears had made a big impression on everyone with her tragic life story. She would emotionally recount how Garnett's father, Blake, a policeman, had been killed in a car crash. There had been several miscarriages before and after Garnett, a very sick baby who had been in and out of hospitals since birth. He was a failure to thrive child, she would explain, who had to be fed nightly through a gastrostomy tube that had been surgically implanted in his abdomen when he was 9 months old. He also suffered from celiac disease and Crohn's disease, and his esophagus was just a quarter of the size it should be. She said he wouldn't eat and would be hungry, said Una, and he'd go for hours and days sometimes without food. There was much sympathy and goodwill for Lacey in the caring fellowship, which had opened its heart to her. She was admired as a devoted mother whose entire life revolved around her son and coping with his continual illnesses. Lacey was also a holistic evangelist, frequently preaching on Facebook against Western medicine and child vaccinations. She poured the mixture into a feeding bag attached to a special machine, hanging from an IV pole in her front room. It would go directly into Garnett's stomach via the G-tube. Although sympathetic to Garnett's eating problem, Una noticed that whenever she took him out to eat at a local diner, he happily devoured hamburgers and fries or anything else put in front of him, and he always asked for more.